we'll have a fairly slow meeting.
Uh, well, long story short, on
Yeah, what do you
I'm
got going
highly
on?
interested. My guy John, he's come up with a really good master plan that incorporates what the city and county of Denver has put together from our input as business owners and neighbors in the Sunnyside neighborhood. So I don't know when he'll be finished with it, so I can showing you, but I'm very excited to show you from what I've seen of it. It's answer a lot of questions and a lot of issues for what you want to see 25 years down the road.
That would be great. I would love to see that. I mean, that's part of the
Yeah,
discussion that we'll have today on 44th.
yeah. Well, and we need. John hasn't gone that far south,
Oh, right.
because he's focusing in on our property and all that neat kind of stuff. So, but that's where we are. Just to let you know, I have, because of the homeless camps being moved,
Yeah, I
I
heard about that.
have spent. Well, they left a lot of debris,
Yeah,
a lot of
you were telling
debris.
me that at the last meeting.
Right, but I hired a company to clean up both the north Jason homeless camp debris, and then south of our property on the rail spur between us and Mile High Comics. There was another gigantic big debris pile, and I had that company clean that up also. And then when I was over there, found another home for a homeless guy who's been living over there for, he said, 3 years. So,
Good Lord. Wow, you've done a lot of a lot of work.
well, I'm just trying to. I mean, general manager of the property, my father-in-law asked me to, take care of business, and I'm just taking care of business for my wife and her little brother who own the property.
Right.
And as we've talked before, we have quite an opportunity to make you know, an impact on the future by doing this right.
Yeah, no, I
And
appreciate that. Well, let's set up some time in the next couple of weeks. I'd love to come by and hear more about it and see what you got going on. Hi, Melissa.
not a problem.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Hey, thanks for coming and sharing all that stuff. I've got you on the agenda here for pretty much first, and then it looks like people are trickling in here. So I'm going to get started because we're already kind of 5 minutes in. And then you're pretty much first on the sort of agenda after those opening sort of things. Then I just want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. I'm happy to stay for the whole meeting.
Okay, cool. I'll get started here with the meeting, everybody. Troopy's out today. She's flying back east. And so I'm going to try to hold this down myself. Welcome to April's SUNY Land Use Committee meeting. I'm just going to start going through the agenda because it's a little bit of an unusual agenda tonight. We thought, with all of the flurry of emails going around and discussions this week about the 44th corridor, and particularly the 44th and Tejon corner property there, and the concerns and issues about that we would, see if that was a topic that everybody'd like to discuss for most of the meeting tonight. And so I just want to go through a few announcements, and then we'll get on to some of those discussions and see what kind of interest and conversations that we can have about those two items. So to get started, let's go through the agenda in minutes. If anybody has taken a look through tonight's agenda and has any comments or updates they'd like to see on it, just please let me know. If you have approved it, would somebody go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes for tonight, and we'll get started. I guess
Sounds great. Motion to approve.
Oh, thanks, Bill. All right. Well, okay, let's get rolling. Were there any comments or feedback from last month's meeting? The recording was posted up on YouTube. Does anybody have any comments about last month's meeting? Hearing none, we will move on. I've got a few minutes here slated for any public comment for items that somebody wants to bring up. They may not be topics that we can actually get into full discussions about tonight, so keep them brief. Is there anything that somebody would like to provide comments about land use or bring up about the neighborhood?
Rod, this is Brad.
Hey, Brad.
Sorry, I was a little late. I guess the only thing you and I have talked about a little bit was just the whole composting change and just making sure everybody's aware of it. And if we wanted to discuss it, however, I think there was a small change in their policy today based on what Sarah was telling me, which makes it slightly better, but it still seems like something that might be worth discussing.
What was that small change?
Apparently the green food bags are now acceptable.
That was the part I thought was really like took it to unreasonable, but
yeah, but it wasn't originally allowed. They had to go like argue with them about it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, because I'm not dumping that bag out. That thing is so disgusting, like with coffee grounds and stuff. So
well, you still can't put your coffee filter in.
No, and I don't use a filter. I've got the screen, but
right.
Yeah. So for anybody that knows, there is stuff posted on the city about the changes to the composting, and they've put some pretty severe restrictions on like what can go in there now, since there's a third party company taking care of that. So, and if anybody's interested, let me know, and I can put some. There were some links that went around from the city this week that kind of explain that, and there's some PDFs out there on the city's website about what those changes are. So if you're interested, drop it in the chat and I'll put a link in there. So thanks for bringing that up. Is there anybody else that's got any other items they'd like to bring up?
Yeah, Rod, I think that, and I know the time is so limited for this, we might not have a chance to, but if we have a chance to, the SUNY Land Use Committee should make a formal opinion on Senate Bill, I think it's 213, and advance that opinion to our city councilor's office. I might have the number wrong. I know city council hasn't taken an official stance yet, but I think our neighborhood should have a stance so that our city councilor, when she makes a stand, can say, hey, I'm supported by these neighborhoods.
Okay.
I want to encourage everyone to contact their senators, their representatives, right? So about that, because those are the people that are actually making the decision, and that's probably your best bet as to influencing this legislation. And you were right, it is SB 23-213. So please look at that, familiarize yourself with that. We sent out an email earlier this week on Monday to our constituents. If you didn't receive that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share that with you. But it is important that you contact the people that matter, and that's going to be your state representatives.
I will, thanks, Jonathan. I've made notes there. I will get some of those links and make sure we get them posted in the appropriate social media areas for information about that and how to contact senators for those that want to do that. And I'll get SUNY Troopty to go ahead and put those up on the agenda items.
That's in regard to that. That's the one about like density, right? And
the single family zoning
that
issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Arlington,
parking
Virginia
is
just
part of it,
actually
too.
passed it. I wanted to do some more research before I formulated an opinion about it, but Arlington, Virginia just did abolish single family zoning in their entire city.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll make some notes there, Jonathan, and I'll make sure Troopty gets some information up on our social media platforms and the website.
Yeah, and I think that parking is going to come up tonight in the Tejon discussion, and parking is part of that as well.
Yeah.
Always an exciting topic.
Yeah, perfect. Great. If there's nothing else, let's go ahead and the next thing is reports and updates. And we've got Melissa here from Amanda Sandoval's office to give us her monthly update on District 1. So take it away.
Thank you. All right, so there is a link in the agenda to this, but we just have a few updates here. We're reminding everyone that the legislation for ADUs in Denver is moving along. I encourage you to familiarize yourself with that. There is a great 2-page summary. But it talks about how there will be, it'll get rid of the lot size, among other things, and then make it so that there is some differentiation between how they fit in the different contexts, urban, urban edge, and suburban. There's a lot more nuance to that, but I encourage you to read that, familiarize yourself with it, and share your opinion with us and other council members as that moves forward. It'll be at Ludi Committee next Tuesday, and then it'll go on to General Council. So please familiarize yourself with that. I have an information on the Community Transportation Network. As you know, they have put in the traffic circles and different traffic calming measures in Sunnyside. A lot of people have questions, comments, complaints on that. So there is an email address and a phone number in that slide deck for them. We also have the modernizing of the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment hadn't been updated since 1923. We went to the voters and we asked them to remove the Board of Adjustment from charter, where it was essentially enshrined and never to be touched, because we have to go to the voters for all touches to charter. So this has been removed from charter thanks to a vote of the people on 2M. And then council is in the process of replacing that language and updating it to be put into code. So that will have its final public hearing on May 22nd. There's some information on the Outdoor Places program. And then more specifically for the Sunnyside neighbor, we're reminding everyone again, please get involved on the Near Northwest Area Plan. We haven't had the involvement that we would like to see, and we really want to increase that. This will impact your neighborhood for decades to come on everything from land use to even things like transportation and things, schools, parks, and the like. So please, get involved. If you sign up for email updates, you'll be alerted when there is the opportunity to provide comment on that plan. So we encourage you to do that. And then lastly, we have the La Raza Park designation. So Councilwoman Sandoval was part of the successful effort to rename the park in December of 2020 from Columbus Park to La Raza Park. Following that, this is the next step that has been spelled out. The community has requested it, and it's spelled out by the city in DPD's document. They did a context study that spells out the need for this. So we're following up on that and designating La Raza Park. It'll have 3 public hearings. It'll go to Landmark Preservation on May 2nd, Planning Board on May 3rd, and then City Council on June 26th. We should be, if you're signed up for our email list, we should be sending out an email on this in the next week or so. We're looking for letters of support. So if you have an interest in this and you would like to write a letter of support, we'll have a letter in there that you can use as is or amend to your liking and send on to those organizations or to the different people that'll be having the hearings. So that's pretty much it from us.
Thanks, Melissa. And I just wanted to remind everybody that tonight's agenda is in the public Google Drive folder for SUNY. I have posted the links in the top of the chat, both for tonight's agenda. So you can go look there, which has some links about that are included for some of tonight's topics. It also has the link for just our overall public folder. So all of this stuff is available to you in the Google Drive. And if you click on the links within the within tonight's agenda, like I said, I've placed the link there for Melissa's presentation. She just gave an update. And so all of those, there's hundreds of links in her document there for all of the stuff that she's talking about, just so we don't have to overwhelm our Google Drive folder. And so these are all out there for everybody to go dig into and get more information about. So thanks again, Melissa, for the update. So I'll go ahead and move on. We just have a few things, and these are the zoning requests and variances and sort of things. And we get dozens of these a month, and I usually just put the ones in here that are within Sunnyside. For the Board of Adjustment, we received 2 of them this month. There's one at 4582 North Shoshone Street, and the case number, and basically it's a request to split the lot from 1 to 2 on that parcel. And then there's an appeal on a decision for 4358 North SUNI That's that corner lot. They were actually approved for 2 of their variance requests, but not the area well on that corner. And so they're going to go back and sort of rework that. As far as zoning, there was only one. There's a request to go from a USUC to a C1 designation at 4690 Clay Street. So if anybody's curious about that, the case number is there in the agenda, and you can find that in the in the minutes. There are Melissa had talked about this. The ADU Denver text amendment stuff will be going to city council. I think you said that was like next week to go to the Ludi, and then that following week, the 18th. Yeah. So if you're interested in following along at city council meetings, the ADU thing, and also temporary managed community text amendments are up on that same city council meeting, which I know is a hot topic. So that will be on April 18th, which is a Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. And you can find those links online to watch it on Zoom if you're interested.
Is it seeming like the ADU amendments are going to get passed at this point? Is that kind of what it's trending towards, or do we not know?
Anything's possible, right? But
Right.
it is our anticipation that it would pass. The removal of the controversial issue to remove the owner occupancy requirement moved this forward in a way that we weren't able to previously.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like everything I've heard too is that it's moving forward and kind of going through the normal process at this point.
Well, I can't pop my garage unless it passes. So
Yeah. Well, I'm waiting on 2 projects right now that I just decided rather than going for a administrative variance or a variance, just wait till it
waited
comes
out a couple
through.
months.
And
Yeah.
I told them it would be shorter to wait.
Yeah,
At this
sorry.
point, it's shorter to wait. So last announcement, we've got one continuing sort of unfinished. Billy Wang had asked us to put together a letter of support for him, a zone map amendment to change his current property that is zoned IA OU 2 to a CRX 8. And he asked for a letter of support in the last meeting. We put a survey out there. We actually only got one response, and it was actually against the zone map amendment for just a little bit of an update. And I don't see Billy on here tonight, so let's see if I have a map here. It's on Inca Street, and it's currently sandwiched between 2 CRX8s, and this is the little parcel that he's requesting be rezoned to a CRX8. So it's one contiguous half block of CRX8. Since we only got one response to the survey, we decided that, in good conscience, we don't have the ability to write a letter of recommendation. And we thought we'd just leave the survey up there for another week if anybody would like to go do it. So there's a link to the survey here in the agenda if anybody's interested in voicing their support or non-support for rezoning that property for Billy. The truth is, our position is he doesn't really need our letter of support, because I think it's something sandwiched between those 2 lots that's pretty kind of straightforward with the city allowing it. But he does want it. So if anybody's interested, I just ask that you go take the survey and give your support or non-support, and then we'll reconvene next month and see if it gets support or does not. So that was it. So that was it for anything. We don't really have any new business tonight, other than we had thought it would be nice to have a focused discussion for the remainder of the meeting here. So I tried to leave as much time as we possibly could, because there has been discussion that this could become like a big conversation. And the 2 topic points are first about the 44th Street corridor between Federal and the Chaffee Park intersection at Tejon, and also the lot at the corner of Tejon and 44th on the southwest corner, which is currently zoned MS2. There is a sign, and this is how the discussions got going about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, is there's a sign that on the fence that says it's an MX2, which is incorrect. So they paid for a sign that was printed incorrectly. And so then it just started this discussions about, on that particular lot, Apparently it's on the market for $2.9 million by a development firm. And there's been all of the information about that company. I think they're out of Vail or something. And it's sort of a shovel ready project. They've already got a 2-story residential multifamily project permitted, and they're selling the property and the permitted plans as one thing. So I guess they bought the property for 1.5 and now they've got it listed for 2.9 or something like that. And it comes with the plans. And the conversation, it revolves around, and that's why we wanted to talk about both, because they're sort of interconnected, trying to keep our commercial and retail spaces along 44th, particularly at that intersection, which is such a key intersection with the park there right across the street. There's a lot of discussion about it would be a shame if we lost some of our ground level retail and commercial spaces along the corridor. And so as part of both of these discussions, what we've talked about is forming a work group for the 44th Avenue corridor and discussing how we might be able to save and maintain some of the commercial spaces along there. And really the longer term prospects of just what the corridor looks like, what our neighborhood wants the corridor to be, and what that process would look like. And then a second sort of focus group, looking into if there is anything we can do about the 44th and Tejon corner property. Right now it's use by right. If somebody dropped $2.9 million, they could probably start digging next week if they pull the permit. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but that's what I'd like to open the discussion up to and see what people's level of interest is. If there would be interest in forming work groups and focus groups on these two topics. There was a petition that went around for the 44th and Tejon property. I think it has over 550 signatures to date, in support of like trying to save the retail ground level. So there is support behind it, but what we need to do is find some people that are interested and willing to sort of take that on and move some of those items forward and figure out what can be done. And then if something can be done, how to implement that. So I want to open it up to the floor and let everybody hopefully everybody's got some opinions on this and can bring something to the table. And I know you, Jonathan, have a lot of opinions on it. So does anybody want to talk to this at all? It's gonna be a real short meeting tonight because that's all I had on the agenda.
I think that Sam had written somewhere that he's going to be here, but not till like 7:10 or 7 o'clock or something.
Oh, okay. So we're a little bit early.
Let's not go home until he shows up.
Okay. No, we won't do that.
But
Well, and I can bring up some of my thoughts and I'd like to get some feedback on it. One of the things that I have started to research and look into, and I even did I'm just going to share my.
Yeah, and while you're sharing that, Rod, like you and I have obviously talked a bunch. Like I'm very interested in being a part of like the 44th corridor work group, and I think it's something that we should definitely do. I know that you're looking for people to kind of take that on and lead the charge. I'm not saying I can't. I'm just saying, and again, you and I kind of talked this week. Like I just have a lot of personal stuff going on right now, so I don't know if it's really in my cards to lead it starting immediately. But I'm not saying no, I guess but like, obviously these are things we want to try to address as soon as possible. But I think getting a work group together of, people that, are in the industry or are passionate about it, but also we can maybe work our knowledge of the industry of how to approach it, I think is a great idea. And I think there's a lot of, it's what you've pointed out that we never really thought about was like, it's more than just, we all want retail on the first floor. Is what's the amount of retail that the corridor can really sustain and is appropriate, not just like what do all of us want, right? So again, like I'm not saying I wouldn't lead the charge, but I'm not in a place for the next probably couple months until my house is no longer under renovation to really be able to
Right.
step up
Well,
and-
and that's the problem that, well, the hurdle that I see is Troopty was really looking for somebody that could lead the charge. She had 4 or 5 people that were interested in being on the work group, that all had professional sort of backgrounds that would be advantageous to have on the group, but also because of their normal everyday workload and what they've had going on, none of them were willing to be the sort of organizer and leader of the group. And so that's really what we're looking for, is somebody to sort of maybe not do all of the digging in the dirt and doing the work, but to organize it, manage it, and coordinate everything. And so that's really what the ask is going to be. Yeah, and I have done some research, so, and I would definitely want to be part of the group. I just don't have the bandwidth to sort of take it on. And
Yeah, and Rod, maybe the solution is if we're all running in the same province, like, you can have co-leaders of it,
Well,
like
yeah,
people,
that's what
right? Like,
Troopty and I are doing with this group, with this.
right. So
yeah,
like if
we're
that's what it comes
co-doing it.
down to, and there's it comes down to like myself and somebody else that can kind of split some of the big tasks on the when we're available to do that, right? I think there's a possibility there. Because I don't want it to like fall the wayside because none of us can make the time, because like I think it's important enough that I would try to figure it out. It's just being fully honest, like there's just a lot going on, and it would currently be a big ask, at least for the next month or two.
Yeah, and there's a lot about it, because we talked about like what is sustainable along that corridor, what would be the future thoughts and neighborhoods ideas behind what it could be, and like you had mentioned, how much retail could it support? I mean, right now I think the conversation is very at the early stages here, is how do we save what's existing? Just that's the threshold there. Trying not to lose some of the current retail and commercial spaces that we've got, rather than actually growing retail. The minimum ask would be, how do we save what we currently have? I've already done like a bunch of research on, well, if we want commercial there, how much commercial can it support with a walkable community, and I have no idea. I mean, those are things where you get into GIS and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's more urban planning, and
right. I mean, we obviously don't want to just say, hey, we want all this commercial there, but then businesses can't survive because they can't be supported by the community. That empty spaces is worse than, I
got to imagine there's at least a urban planner that lives in Sunnyside.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
I mean, statistics would say there's at least one.
Yeah, probably. Well, what we can do is, I have posted also in there, right up at the top in the chat, if you scroll up, we've got that pcd@sunnysidedenver.org email. So if anybody is interested or has further questions about any of this as this conversation goes forward, rather than posting it in the chat here and doing that, because it's tough for me to sort of follow along in the chat and capture all this stuff. We're asking that anybody that could be interested or wants to join, and here's Sam, he's popping on, to send an email to that PCD, and Troopty and I both, well, Troopty gets that email, and we'll start to organize and coordinate, rather than going through the Google group and all of that kind of stuff, as we get people that are interested. And, I just love to further the conversation, and maybe we can drum up more interest, and I've already done a little bit of stuff, just sort of personal things. But again, like you said, I'm not an urban planner. I think getting some of those people with that type of experience on board would be much better, suited for the task. Hey, Sam.
Hello. Hi,
Hey.
everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for hopping on, because we were just sort of we got a little early getting into the discussions. I'll bring you up to speed, because you're focused there on that 44th and Tejon property with all the work you've done so far. Basically, we just started talking at a very high level, both about the 44th Street Avenue corridor from Federal to the park, and then the other topic would be that parcel on the corner of 44th and Tejon. And the interest that the community and people here have to being part of either a work group for the 44th corridor, sort of how do we save some of our commercial spaces would be, I think, the first goal that they'd have. But the bigger picture is, you know, what do we all envision 44th looking like down the road and the long-term growth there. And then the second one would be, and I don't know if we call it a work group or a focus group or something, but just a group that would discuss, is there something we can do for that corner property at 44th and Tejon? What are the things we can do? And then if there is action items that they find, you know, how do we implement them? So, and I know you're more versed in that corner property because you've been working this a lot longer than and have more information. So if you have anything to add to that side of the conversation, I would love to have you, you know, you fill everybody in.
Sure. Well, I'll do the best I can. I'm not by any means an expert or even the most up-to-date person here in terms of the coding, the status of the property. You know, I really just organized the petition, to be quite honest, and I'm getting my information from Troopty and from you guys. But have you gone over the status that apparently the property is now up for sale?
Yep, I did. I that was the intro I did to it, is that it's, you know, on the market with approved plans for $2.9 million, and it's pretty much use by right. So my first question to the group is there anything we can really do?
How much did you say that entire lot is for sale with approved plans?
Yeah, 2.9 million, I believe, is what the conversation emails going around were stating.
And I've been corrected. So from what I can tell, the details of the approved plans is that it is a 2-story. I don't know if they're condos or apartments, but
Multifamily though.
Well, apparently, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that the bottom floor is supposed to be like sort of a mixed use workspace, which for my, yeah, I mean, for my purposes and for what I care about, that doesn't matter, because what matters is that it's not anything that's walkable, that adds interest or interactive ability for the street level. So to me, that's not a huge deal what the detail of that bottom floor is. But
well, that is an interesting point that I did not know, because that would be 2 separate occupancies, which means it would not be type 5B construction, which means those 2 occupancies would have fire separation. So that ground floor space, if it's a workspace, a commercial space, it could be shops or retail or something like that. It's when you have a single use building where you don't have those higher levels of fire separation in the building code, where you couldn't put a business in there because it's not separated from the residents by the proper, you know, firewall assembly. So if it is slated and the approved plans are for a commercial space, and I would think that a shared workspace falls into that category because it's kind of a public open space, then that's a different type of construction, which would allow for, you know, maybe that workspace doesn't succeed, and, you know, a few years from now, it's a corner store or something.
Yeah, Rod, we have to look into it though, because it could just be like a live work, right? And then in that case, it's not going to be a right. If it's a live work,
you mean like the first floor, they could like have their
heard.
office in their apartment.
Correct.
Yes, it's not separated.
Then it's just a party wall, not a separation.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. That's probably just 5B construction, and it's
and it
or
is
5A.
indeed a live work and not a retail.
Right.
That's what I've heard from. I think that's what Amanda said when I talked to Melissa. You were there. I talked to Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that makes more sense with all the uproar.
Yeah.
So, well, right before you got on, what the ask is tonight, and where I'd really like to steer this conversation, is to put this out there, even if anyone here is not interested as being part of one of these work groups or focus groups, to share this and see if they know anybody that would be interested, and really get the word out there, because we need a good group of community members, and we're trying to grow the amount of people that work on these things and get involved. And so that would be my biggest ask tonight is, you know, one, if anybody here is interested, shoot an email there to that PCD at sunnysidedenver.org and let us know your interest. And then 2, share this with everybody you know in the neighborhood. because I think it's something that's important. It's something that, we may not be able to stop now, but if we can, even along the corridor, if we can save some of our commercial spaces and identify how we can do that, I think that has long-term benefits for the sustainability of and walkability of Sunnyside, 50 years from now. Because let's just face it, if that building gets built on the corner, it's a 50-year proposition before we're having this conversation again about what can go in there.
So I can put that on the petition. I can ask folks that are interested in participating in a workforce on that project to email. Did you say it was pcd@sunnyside.org?
Yep. I'll I don't know, does that chat show up there in the shared screen, or maybe it doesn't, but yeah, pcd@sunnysidedenver.org. It's in the chats there, and I'll repost it again down in the chat. So it's at the bottom of the page. So there's the email again in the chat.
Okay.
And that's also in tonight's agenda. And so you can also access all of that in the agenda and everything as well. So one of the conversations, and if anybody else wants to pipe up, jump in. I had just done some stuff this week. There were a lot of emails going around, and Sam, I think you were on there. Brad, I don't know if you were in there or not on those emails or not. One of the discussions with a developer about that the financials just don't work to put a commercial space on the ground floor with residential above in the mixed use or MS or even MX for that matter, 2 or 3 zoning designations. So a 2 or 3 story. And like I said, currently that lot is a 2-story zone lot, MS2. And I had said, well, let me back up. First, there was a discussion that, maybe we give a carrot in saying the neighborhood would support if the city would allow it up zoning that to an MS3 to allow that developer, if they promise to do main level retail at the first floor, to allow them to go 1 extra story, and that would be the carrot. And the developer in the email string had said that those financials still don't work. And so, and not being a developer, I don't know if it works. I said, well, maybe it goes to MS5, and maybe that's a big enough carrot to, get the proposition where we can get main level retail and increase the density. That, of course, got all sorts of, people that did not like going to MS5. So I put together, and these are in the agenda. There's a link there for anybody that's interested. I did a couple of shadow studies, and I will just bring them up here. Where did I do with them? And what I did is I did a 3-story structure and a 5-story structure, both winter and when you go click on the link, you'll see it's winter and summer. And I just did it just to show what the shadows would look like. And if anybody's interested in watching that, you can kind of see, like, this is just before noon, like a shadow on a 3-story in the wintertime would go completely across 44th and about halfway onto the Monkey Barrel property. And a shadow from a 5-story building goes almost all the way across the Monkey Barrel property. So another 30 or 40 feet or so in the wintertime casting the shadow. But that was something that I thought would be a good discussion as we got into the work group. If people are interested, like, what does it look like when we're talking about all these things, and what are the tools that we'd have available to us? So those links are in there. If anybody's curious, I just threw it together in SketchUp.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to talk the whole hour.
So Amanda has obviously accomplished an overlay on the Tennyson corridor, requiring some requiring commercial on the bottom. And so apparently for developers there, apparently the economics work. So I'm wondering, what is the comparison from the developer's point of view between Tennyson and 44th?
So, and I've had some conversations, and Melissa was in on the conversations as well with Trupti and Amanda and I about the biggest difference between that. I think it's a DO8. Am I correct? It's DO8. Tennyson is a street, and has contiguous alley access to all of those commercial properties that run behind the parcels parallel with the street. Whereas 44th Avenue corridor, and I've got the map here, is an avenue, and the alleys run perpendicular to it. So from a you can see, and sorry, it's a fuzzy picture in SketchUp, but
Well, Rod, I think the question though is more about the economics, right? Especially for that one corner on Tennyson. Not Tennyson, Tejon.
Yeah, Tejon.
Right?
Yep.
Because Tejon is a street, right? Not an avenue. So if the question seemed, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but the question is more if a 3-story on Tennyson works with first floor retail from a developer standpoint, from the economics, why is a 3-story with retail on the first floor not work for the economics of a developer at Tejon and 44th?
So I think I can address this.
Well, hold on a second, Jonathan, just really quick. I was just responding to why we couldn't just apply DO8.
Correct. Yeah.
Because there was other things in DO8 that I believe what Amanda relayed to me was it was more difficult to apply DO8 to an avenue because of some of the other stuff in there. And that's not specifically addressing the economics. So go ahead, Jonathan. Thanks.
Just to address the economics, in the discussion that I was part of, the developer said that doing 2 stories with ground level or 3 stories with ground level retail might not work because of the sale price for the Tejon property. Not that it wouldn't work in general, but just because at $2.9 million to buy a square of dirt, he couldn't make it work.
Right.
So it might work for other properties. It might work for the future.
Got it.
We do an
so it's a very
overlay.
specific site location.
Yeah,
comment.
but that specific site location, because of the number of square feet and because the asking price is $2.9 million.
Got it.
He said, I could never do this and make this profitable.
Makes sense.
At that price.
I've already texted Rod that he hasn't even seen it yet of what would they sell it without the approved plans.
Oh, texted me? Oh yeah. No, I have no idea.
What can we buy it for without approved plans? I don't want their approved plans. I just want the piece of property.
Right. Well, it's over 1.5 because I believe that's what they paid for it, and then they've got money they've invested in the demo and all of that, and I'm sure they're going to want to recoup that. And the time they spent on the design for the approved plans, they're not going to want to lose. So, I don't know what their profit margins are on that, but I'm guessing that they're going to hold on to it to the economics change unless somebody comes along with 2.9.
And like many other properties in our neighborhood, it's going to be deserted until the economics allow that to be built.
So I just want to make sure I understand before we move on, Jonathan, you were saying that 2.9 is, relatively high asking price, and that to build a 3-story building with, commercial and then 2 floors of residential is just not.
That's what one developer told me personally. I'm not a developer, I'm a nurse. So.
Well, and those $2.9 million plans and parcel is only for a 2-story structure, not for the 3-story. So that would have to be redesigned if it were, if somehow we tried to get some concessions and change the zone map to make that an MS3. So currently that can't be done there, the 3-story. And so 2.9 for a 2-story parcel.
So Rod, can I hog the mic for a minute?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we have 45 more minutes. So talk away.
So there's we kind of have 2 big topics here, right? One big topic is Tejon. What can we do in the future for that corner property to try and work with whoever purchases it? Or can we scrape up $2.9 million and buy it ourselves?
I don't see that.
Right. I don't have the money. The other big topic is what can we do for 44th and for Tejon in the future to prevent the loss of currently existing structures that provide retail on the first floor.
Yep. And just, go ahead. Sorry.
In topic number 2, I think because of course I always think that I have the solution. I think I have the easiest of the many solutions to that. And I think the easiest of the many solutions is that we create an overlay that is as simple as possible, because the simpler it is, the easier it is to get anything through, right? Because you have less things to talk about, less things to change. And the DO8 overlay is really nice because it already exists. It's already been approved and it's already been proven to work well. But the DO8 is complicated, and because of alleyways, it actually might not work for these two particular roads. I think the simplest, fastest way to make a change to the MS2, MS3 zoning on these two roads is to make an overlay that is really truly one sentence long. And if you look at the MS23 zoning, the MS23 zoning says that you can build, and I'm going to get the actual quotes wrong because I didn't call them up because I bought a new computer.
Here you go. Here you go.
I'm drowning in my new computer.
Right here. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's not the line I'm looking for, but we're really close.
Yeah, well, that's the MS2, 3, the entire blurb. But
so what it says somewhere in there is that it's where there's one of the charts with all the little black dots on it. It says you can build townhome or mixed commercial.
yes.
And it's that or that lets what happened at Tejon happen, which someone goes, oh, I'm going to knock this down and build townhome. And if we made an overlay that simply took out that sentence, struck the or, so you could only build mixed use in replace of current mixed use, it would only affect the things that already are there and are already zoned MS2 or MS3. So it wouldn't take away from anybody's current building. It wouldn't make anybody's building be suddenly out of acceptable character. It wouldn't take away anybody's rights who was selling the building or who lived and worked in it. It would simply say, if you buy this MS2 building and you knock it down, what you replace it with has to be first floor commercial retail space, which is what's already in all those buildings. Now, whether we wanted to go up to 3 in the future or someone else wanted to go up to 3 in the future, we wouldn't be dealing with that. We would just be saying, what's there stays like it is if it gets redeveloped, or you go in for a zoning variance like anyone else would who wanted to go in for a zoning variance. But it would prevent the knocking down of retail and the putting in of housing only. It would be one line. It would be super simple. So I don't think we'd have to have meeting after meeting after meeting to go through hundreds of details of an overlay. We'd have bang, one thing. Now the overlay process itself, we'd still have to follow the process exactly. We couldn't shortcut it and just be like, hey, vote us in on Tuesday. That doesn't work. But I think by decreasing the complexity of our ask, we could make this very fast and be ready to go to Amanda Sandoval and hopefully do those steps very quickly.
Yes, and that's what I've heard in the conversations. There have been discussions about text amendments to the overall zoning code, and why don't we just go ahead and change the MS stuff? And those conversations get cut off pretty quickly because it would be a citywide proposition, and every MS zoning district it's got its own little idiosyncrasies, just like 44th does. There was also these moratorium discussions early on, which got nixed pretty quickly as not a mechanism or a tool that was available to us to sort of stop the loss of this. So yes, everything is sort of floated to the top of that. From what I understand, and Melissa, you might be able to elucidate on this a little better, that is still probably an 8-month process at the minimum, even if it's that simple one line.
But 8 months compared to 5 years is a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what the people that join this group need to understand, is that it's an 8-month sort of ask to be a part of this working group.
So I think, I'll go ahead, Melissa.
I do want to clarify that it is a taking, right? Even though it may not seem to be a taking, I do want to clarify that it is a taking. If they have a use by right now to build housing, which is more profitable, then you would essentially be downzoning that and to them, in their opinion, and that would be a taking. So although it does, I understand where you're going with this, it is a taking, and it wouldn't be nearly as easy as it may appear.
And
Right.
thank you. And because of that, Melissa, I just want to say, guys, I think this has to be a two-pronged approach to save things that are really close to being gone. I think it has to be a two-pronged approach where, of course, we need to be working on the zoning and the longer term solution. And at the same time, because developers are not necessarily going to want these changes, because it's going to take a long time, I think the other prong of the approach is what can we do right now? And given that we have no other legal recourse right now to influence anything, that's basically a grassroots sort of media campaign, like pressure campaign, where I think if the community can really come together with one voice and get on the news and talk to the developer, and that's really sort of like the pressure campaign. That's kind of what the petition is a part of. Who knows? Still might be a long shot, but I think if that can sufficiently pressure a developer to question what they're doing, consider listening to the community, consider letting a process play out, or it's just a delay tactic. But I think those two prongs are going to have to be there, because right now we don't have any actual legal way to influence the situation in this moment.
Yeah, I think any and all tools and options should be available and part of that work group on implementing, and get that group together and brainstorm what those might be, because there could be, those two you mentioned, and there could be 2 or 3 other things we add to it. The other thing is, there's been bigger discussions about like what the future of 44th looks like, and that walkability, from the surrounding neighborhoods and stuff like that. Amanda brought up the point that, you can always go back and amend these design overlays. So like, this could be, maybe we get our 1-line sentence in there, work on that, and then have a longer time to work on, maybe a bigger picture thing, that has other ramifications on 44th as to like where commercial spaces and all of that stuff goes. So I think any and all of that is stuff that's, slated for that work group, that we need to sort of put that group together and get them looking into that. And that's why we kind of switched that to this month's meeting, because like you said, Sam, this is a time sensitive thing. And while I think the economics are working in our favor on that corner lot for right now, it won't forever. And that's probably the biggest hurdle I see right now with that corner lot that's kept it from being developed, is the economy right now. Nobody's willing to take that leap. So the economy has bought us a little bit of time to maybe come up with a tool that we can utilize to sort of push the agenda to get some of that commercial space.
So Rod, can you just review those work groups? Were you thinking 2 work groups, like one for 44th in general and the zoning, and another for the corner, or what were you thinking?
When I talked to Trupti about it earlier this week, and then her thoughts were 2 separate groups, because there are 2 separate agendas there. Like you were saying, it's, the one group for the 44th property could be a propaganda and just general public awareness campaign and that kind of thing. Where I think a work group for the 44th corridor, whether it's a design overlay or something like that's decided on, it's got some different tasks that are going to be involved. I will say that both of them are sort of intrinsically linked. And, Jonathan brought up this early in the meeting about, all of these conversations grow to include stuff like public transit and parking and, it's just a big rabbit hole that you start going down when you start talking about some of this stuff, and all of those issues are going to have to be looked at. So whether it's one focus group that works on the whole thing, and then you implement different things for the corner property, I think at some point, if it is 2 separate groups, they need to be coordinated with one another in some way. So maybe it is just one group, and they just have sort of different tasks with different members.
Yeah, my anxiety, and the reason I asked that is, my concern is that if the groups are separate, there's only so many brains that really know the zoning stuff and have talked to the proper. I mean, all these numbers that you're putting out, the sale price, like this is stuff that only a few people know, but is necessary information to have for both groups. So that's
Yeah,
just
well,
a thought. And
I right now I'd say that we're going to be lucky to get enough people to put together one group. So let's start with that. And if we get enough people, we'll worry about dividing it up and dividing and conquering when we have that luxury.
perfect. I agree with that.
Yeah. So because there's so many conversations you could have with this and ways you can look at the 44th corridor from different perspectives, whether it's walkability or like I said, the transit. You know, there's even been emails around. I think there was one talking about like reinvigorating the old trolley lines, you know, and they had a trolley map. That was one of the old trolley neighborhoods. And, you know, how do we bring that back? And I was like, oh God, like it's, you know, so it just, you know, there is no end to where those conversations, and I think they're fun and they're, you know, they're certainly worthwhile conversations to have. And I love talking about that stuff. So I would love to see people with those different interests and those different focuses be part of these groups. Because I think a diverse background of people, will come up with a better solution in my mind's eye than, you know, a group of sort of homogeneous types of people. You know, if they're all city planners, they're all going to come up with the same thing. But if we get members from a broad background in the neighborhood, I think that's a really dynamic working group. So anyway, well, I don't know if we're going to fill the whole hour because it's been a pretty quiet session here. I thought we would have a lot more people based on the emails that were going around that would be interested in chiming in. There were maybe 10 or 15 people on that one email string that were talking about this corner lot. And I thought we'd get a lot more people that were involved in that, and particularly that were, you know, had taken, Sam, your petition. There were several people in there that were talking about that as well. So any thoughts? Anybody like gonna put their hand? Oh, I see Pete's got his hand up. Go ahead, Pete. Is that a volunteer to be on the committee hand?
Well,
On the work group?
I'm really busy. Would participate in the group, but I can't lead it. So with that said, but the only reason why I raise my hand is the only way anything's gonna is you got to make the numbers work. And
Yeah,
I'm not very familiar. I'm not very familiar with 44th and Tennyson, but you know, as one of the oldest neighborhoods in Denver, you know, and since I'm general manager of a key property for this neighborhood, I want to see the people of the neighborhood work together to make it the best neighborhood you guys can make it. We can all make it. So just, you know, because we don't want people to come in there and regentrify the neighborhood. We want them to rejuvenate the neighborhood and make it inclusive for all the people that are there. So, but yeah, I'll volunteer. I'll be part of the team, but I can't lead it.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll count
that's
you
where
in
I'm at with
and
it.
get you on those email strings when Troopty gets that group starting to be set up. Melissa, let me ask you, you know, you guys were so instrumental. I know you came in towards the end of the DO7 and or CO7 and 8s. And I believe Amanda's on board with this. If we do put together this group, you guys, you know, obviously do the same sort of interest and help and assistance in that group that you guys did like in those other overlays. Is that on the table to have you guys involved like that?
You know, and I'm happy to talk to her about that. I don't want to promise anything without talking to her,
Right.
but when you say help, in what way? In the sense that, you know,
Well,
there's discussions-
Naomi helped with like a lot of the stuff and you know, with some of the presentation work, the communication between the, you know, developmental services and Brad and Abe. as you know, in that sort of coordination and facilitation of all of that sort of stuff between the group and the city as the things started to generate and get some legs under it. And you were instrumental at the end there, pushing it over the finish line and, you know, making sure all those communications happened. And, you know, so that would be just great to be able to sort of know that we've got you guys have got our back if we do put a group together to sort of work through that.
I think, I'm happy to talk with her and give you more specifics after I speak with her. But I think what happened with the overlays is that the community started the conversation and coalesced around an idea. And then we brought in efforts from the city to kind of further refine the process.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that we bring in the city right at your beginning meetings.
Oh, no. I just meant as the
okay.
process develops and.
Yeah, as the process, then happy to do that. And I think that that's a fairly safe bet to say.
Yeah. Perfect. So great. Well, and if anybody wants, like I've done some stuff in SketchUp, I'm going to post some of this kind of stuff up into a folder that I've started a folder in the drive for the work group so that we can start exchanging information. It'll have links again. Anybody that hasn't gone out there that's interested in this and worried about the corner lot can go and, let's just get more people on that petition. I think that's a great way to start putting pressure on developers. Sam, I got to give you credit. I mean, we put a survey out there just for Billy Wang's little thing. We got one response, and to get 550 responses on a survey about that is pretty impressive. I will have to say that's a really good turnout on those on that petition.
Well, that's what makes me feel a little hopeful and at the same time a little frustrated, because I think what I see happening is that we have two parallel processes that are moving forward to say that there's the grassroots community petition, our discussion, there's this grassroots movement that's saying, we don't want just like a, whatever apartment building there. And there's also this overlay that's happened on Tennyson that could happen on 44th or a similar overlay. So there's these two, there's the grassroots, there's the zoning process. They're both moving forward. And yet we don't have any power. Like this thing could still sneak in there. And so that's where the desire for like, oh, could we do not an injunction, but what's a moratorium? That's where we were thinking. Yeah. I was like, well, no,
Amanda and Melissa can explain that better, but we did have a phone conversation with them about that. And she was really good in explaining it to me, why that's just not even an available tool. And until Melissa brought it up tonight, it hadn't occurred to me that that's a take, by just sort of that, it seems like a simple one word change, Jonathan, to the text of saying or saying and rather than or, but you have to be prepared for the eventuality that once people get are aware, particularly developers, that's the intention, that you have to be aware that there will be some pushback, and probably some considerable pushback for something like that, because you're cutting into somebody's pockets. And that's why we have to come up with some carrots rather than some stick kind of offerings. And that's, there was a developer on that email conversation that did talk about the economics, and we would love to have people on the group or in the group that have that kind of experience, because I just don't have that knowledge as to what do the metrics look like when you add commercial on the first floor. What are the hurdles? Like I had suggested that, maybe on that corner lot, you give them 5-story, because then the economics work. And I just don't know if I was just guessing, that would be a carrot, but maybe that isn't a carrot. Maybe that's not the case. That in no situation does commercial work right now. Some of it, the conversation is revolved around the property tax codes, which are at the state level, which have nothing to, which is a way bigger, the differential between commercial property being taxed and residential property tax rates is like something like, what is it, 7 point something versus 29%, so that's a hurdle as well. And that's a much bigger topic that, like I said, it's a rabbit hole you can go down. Like talking about changing the tax code is, that's probably part of that discussion, but I don't know where that would lead.
I think part of what we have going for any direction we decide to go, for sure, is that Sam has done this incredible piece of community outreach and gotten an enormous number of people, well beyond, like, even when we did our meetings for the overlays, we would get, a couple years ago, we'd get 50 people, we'd get 60 people. We never got 550 people showing up, or let alone 550 people showing up that agreed with an idea. So I think we know that we have the community support to try and keep retail in our area. And that alone saves us months of work, right? Like,
well,
we
I
still
would,
have to do
I
outreach.
would have liked, Sam, I'd like to take that energy that you got to get 550 people and get them 550 people in a meeting like this, where, because then, let's say we get 1% of them, we've got a group, I mean, like, we need to, maybe that's part of the start here, Sam, is to use that as a platform to develop some of this focus group, because it's a larger pool of people that just aren't showing up at these monthly meetings for SUNY.
Well, and I will just take that moment to introduce myself, if you can hear me.
Hi, Martha.
Hi, I'm Martha. I will just introduce myself on behalf of the immediate neighbors. So we got wrapped in by Megan McNeil, who's across the street, and Kyle is here. We are the direct duplex right behind the property, and Derek Smith as well. So I think there's been a lot of dialogue in those emails. And I have a daughter with some complicated health stuff. So being on a work group is beyond my capacity, but care about this neighborhood. So glad to be here, and appreciate all the support that goes into making it what it is, which is a beautiful place to live. So just wanted to introduce myself.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it was nice to see a face with the emails that were going around and the communications. Yeah, and that's really what it is I don't think we have the ability here in this sort of forum to, make decisions for the neighborhood, and the group's, task would be to find out what the community really wants. And, like we've had these discussions about, well, we need to have retail at the main floor, and, well, is that, really what the entire community needs and what Sunnyside needs. So the more people we can get involved, the better. And the better pulse we'll have of what everybody wants. Particularly the neighbors that are going to be most affected, like Martha.
Yeah, Martha, I wasn't seeing those emails. I'm just curious if you could talk about, just explain a little more about how you connected with us. Was it the petition? Was it some sort of word of mouth? Like, how did you, just hear about this and get connected as obviously you care. How did you find us to use your voice and come here?
Our neighbor across the street, Megan McNeil, wrapped us into an email thread, just kind of discussing, I think, out of the property being listed for sale again, and then the petition was linked through. So I think, retail is definitely something we care about, and access to, those kind of walkability pieces in this neighborhood. But then, as being directly behind the lot, also, 3 stories, I think, is, a consideration. Derek Smith, who is the house next to us here, who is I think the third property, the 3 of us share the direct line behind the property. Going above 3 stories would just, I think, be, really impact the quality of our outdoor living. And then the parking idea, what that would look like with, having more kind of traction in that space. So I think it's cool that there's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. And, well, it sounds like there's at least three people on here that would be not lead up this group, but at least would be the core. And I think Troopty had a list of like three or four other people that were in the professional realm. So, that's the good start. But, Sam, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more at some point about like, maybe we can utilize your, feedback that you've gotten from the petition to reach out to like a larger pool of people that maybe then we could draw some more people into the working group. And based on this conversation tonight, I think that we shoot for the goal of getting one working group that deals on both of those issues for right now, and see where we take it from there. So is there anybody else that's got some stuff? I mean, I know we're not quite at the time. I've got a few announcements I'll make.
In the chat, Garrett in the chat has offered to give us a point of view from an investor developer standpoint. I'd love to hear from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Is he?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm on my cell phone, so I'm blacked out, so you can't see my face. So I don't know if can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I was actually one of the first ones to be like, it might be interested with the extra story, but then the complications of kind of getting Tejon to where you guys want it. But quite honestly, I mean, the list price on the 2.9 is utterly ridiculous, even for the 2 stories. This is kind of what's happening right now in Denver, because it takes so long to get through the city of Denver and any type of capacity and an SDP. And investors are just losing hand over fist money. And so what they're trying to do is they're just trying to get out of these projects. If you search the MLS, there are a lot of shovel-ready jobs and on CoStar. There's a lot of investors just trying to get out because they're obviously nervous. And I think there's a lot of people that are also just listing the land value way too high to where it's at. And I mean, 2.9, I just ran a pro forma on it. And I mean, the rents that they have are way too high. First off, and their build cost from 214 to I think was 40 that they had in there. That was like 3 years ago. So the numbers on where they're at are not even close. I mean, to build something of that magnitude, you're probably, because it's more of an apartment grade scale, you have fire, you have all sorts of different other things. I mean, it's 275 to 280 a square foot, something around there is what I'm guessing. I might be a little high. And if you add that third level, all you're doing is increasing that cost. And for you on that site, that small site, you're never going to be able to park well enough to get the rents that you need, nor are you ever going to be able to get that anchor tenant there, probably that's going to need to be open 20, like it's going to be a really special tenant to get in there to be holding that lease in there as well. The numbers weren't even close on anything. So I honestly just think they're just trying to see if someone has 1031 money to just pop in and get it and then to build it out. The other thing that I don't, maybe it's missed in there, but the 5 street facing units on Tejon are live work. So those are units that the front side of it can be businesses. So I know some of you were also saying, maybe you say you can't build townhomes there or in those zone lots. Well, then that would be kind of a way around it as well. So you'd probably have to work around live work as well. But the numbers aren't even close. Even the carrots that were thrown out there, 5 stories, it just doesn't work from an economic standpoint unless they drop their purchase price significantly. So
when you say the numbers aren't even close, do you have like a percentage, like they're 50% off? Or are they 40?
Yeah, like I wouldn't. I would buy it maybe for $1.6 million at the like. That's like I like it was. I'll build out a pro forma so you can see the 2-story and then you can see like a 3-story. And you'll just see. I do mostly for sales type of stuff, so I don't have like a rent calculator, rent pro forma with all that's getting built into there. But you can just take a mortgage calculator from a very basic standpoint so you guys can see it. And right now, interest rates on something at that commercial level are 7.5%. So you're building it. Let's just say each floor plate right there was 1 second. I think it was 24,000 total. So it's 12. Okay, so 36,000 times 275. So you're at 9.9 million, and that's not even including the land yet. So then if you just run a mortgage calculator, that probably, this is so basic, so don't take my total word for it, but
Well, yeah, but
Goes
that's what this conversation is at the super high level.
yeah. So I'll just say there 7.5, and this doesn't even have, without property taxes included or any insurance, your monthly is $53,000 a month. So that means even if you have 15 units on the 53,000, so divided by
3,500.
well, I'm just trying to, if you, let's just say you put 50, because it's 15 units, right? So
Yeah, I didn't even know what the plans had in them.
yeah, so it's 15 units. So if you're adding, if you just did it on that point and you added another, so 22 units, let's just say you did all residential. So 52,000 divided. Calculator or divided. Clear.
2,400.
Yeah, so you're at 2,400, and those units are that, I don't think they'd be very big, quite honestly.
Right.
It's gonna be a very hard time to lease those up at that point, especially with no parking or covered parking. Yeah, it'd be, I mean, you're gonna have, those are essentially almost gonna be like micro units in a way to
Right.
cover that.
Well, and no other amenities. There's no pool, there's no gym.
Yep.
No...
Exactly. So it's just not even close. So I know I love, and then the other thing that got brought up in the email is building it out like the Rambo Hotel. I mean, the Rambo Hotel is also a hotel, so you have to think about it from that perspective. Their daily rate is like $350 a night. I mean, their RV is probably extremely high. And then they have Death and Co in the bottom, which is from New York City. I mean, so you have to find that type of tenant to be in there. So from my perspective, I mean, you're never going to get any developer to come in and take this from him at the end of the day, unless it was subsidized somehow. So
Garrett,
I
just so
think I just think you're going to be barking up the wrong tree. And quite honestly, as soon as the developer hears you're doing anything, they're just going to put shovels in the ground. And at that point, you're not going to be able to stop it.
Garrett, just so you know, I understand very, very little of what you're saying. Are you interested in being in a work group so that we can, take some more time on what you're talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have more of these conversations because I feel like developers, and I'm a little bit newer developer, and I listen to you guys a lot more than you probably think because I want to help out the community and do stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff I build, like I just did a quadplex in West Colfax where we do all brick facades, try to make it look like kind of a brownstone. It's all electric, solar panels, all that type of stuff. That's the type of builder I am. But it's costly and my profit margin is not nearly as well as my other projects that I've done without that. But I'm hearing you guys, and I know we don't want to take away character from different neighborhoods and do all that type of stuff. So I'd love to be part of that, but also play devil's advocate on the side of developers sometimes where maybe you guys aren't seeing it and you're playing, to me, this might sound wrong, but you're playing with someone else's money. And that's where they get really concerned too. They're like, well, because sometimes some of these developers that out there, you'd think they have big pockets, but some of them really don't. They're putting 50% of their life savings in some of these projects and going at them. So they're not well financed unless they're the big developers. So I don't think a big developer is picking up a 15 unit on the side of Sunnyside. So
well, and that's what we've talked about is, I mean, early, I don't know, Garrett, how early you jumped on, but neighborhoods are developed by developers. And the idea here is to find the sweet spot in the crossover where there are benefits for both sides, the developer and what the community wants to see, and finding out where those commonalities are. And, some of those emails, and you probably saw some of them, Garrett, of, the concern with outside developers coming into the community, building something that the community doesn't want and extracting, wealth and money from the neighborhood and leaving the neighborhood to hold the bag, whether it's 7 years down the road with a building that's falling apart because it was built like crap, or just building something that sort of ruins, a street or a neighborhood for, the decades to come. if we can find ways to reach those commonalities, I think that's what the group would be looking for, and find a way
Yeah.
that it's beneficial for both.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think it's just a general city-wide thing that has to happen. I mean, I've talked it with 3 or 4 developers, and I hear you guys on your architectural standards. Like we would love to build like brick brownstones, all that stuff if we could get to the city in 3 to 6 months. I'd do it all day. But the cost between brick and stucco and outside siding is sometimes $15 a square foot to $3 a square foot, and that's your budget. That's your profit.
Right.
So those are things that sometimes you don't see on the outside where you got to do that. And then there's sometimes like you can't. So like when I build something, I can't, as soon as I set it, those plans are set. I can't like all of a sudden go out there and be like, you know what? I do not like the look of that brick. I'd like to change it, or I'd like to change that type of whatever. You can't do that. As soon as you get those plans in, you are set, you are stone, and you have to go. And you can't ask for a variance while you're building it while you have a construction loan, because you're ticking money.
Yeah,
And
that ball is rolling down the hill.
Yep.
And there's no stopping.
Exactly. Because there's times where we picked the wrong brick color. It was supposed to come out and look like a silver, and it came out and it looked like a brown, and we get, oh my God, how did we do that? But you already bought the brick, you already did that, and so you're already in on it. Like it's an interesting time. Like sometimes you just like you get upset with yourself, but you can't really do anything, and you have to sell on that. And I know that sucks to hear sometimes that type of stuff, but that happens all the time. Where you pick finishes and it doesn't work out the way that you wanted to, or with the way that it looked in the rendering, and all sorts of things. So,
right.
But yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you at least being willing to be part of the group, because I think your insight and your expertise would be really advantageous for moving the discussions forward.
And then my other horse, I would just kind of ride on a little bit. And I think this is the reason why like you have all these like groups, right? And they mean well, but also sometimes you're slowing down development. And I think that's the reason why you see what the state is proposing. So they're now trying to take away the reins of city municipalities and their zoning code, because there's all these different hindrances to get housing through. And so they're just trying to take that out of your guys' hands. And so that's what's happening. So I think anything that groups like this do, or anything like that, there should also always be a focus on efficiency of the city and planning, like city planning. Because if you can push these things through quickly and efficiently, we would much rather use higher finishes and everything. And it's easier to sell too. But when you're looking at those different costs, you go through each different thing. And if you miss certain things you miss your list price by 25, 30,000, you lost everything almost sometimes. It just depends. So because it takes so long to get to the city and actually build. So
well, and the environment can change so much in those timeframes that what you had in your spreadsheet and your metrics when you started the project just doesn't even look realistic by the time you even consider getting through the permitting process. So
if you think about this, we were building at $180 a square foot in 2020. We have been bidding out projects and we can't get below 250 on townhome projects. It's insane. So anything that you see get built that's kind of new, you can just back of the envelope, you can just put 250 to the square foot and just kind of figure it out. And that's without any soft cost, land costs, or anything like that. So
right. Well, I really appreciate your feedback there, and I would love to have further this discussion with you, because I'd like to know more and learn more about those metrics and what really does, because obviously we want not only do we want stuff that the neighborhood wants, but we want stuff that attracts the right developers to the neighborhood to do the stuff that the neighborhood wants to have in it. So
absolutely. I think one thing that would be really interesting, I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but the thing that I would love to do is, and I think I saw it read in one of the emails, is a 1-story duplex type of product. I think that'd be really interesting to see what you could do with it. Sorry, my dog's going crazy.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, I don't remember the one story. I remember some of the images that were being thrown around.
But basically, I think a lot of the architecture that's happening that's kind of upsetting the neighborhoods is you have all these one-story bungalows, right? And so if you're able to build a one-story duplex and you could have farther, like reduced setbacks on the front side, back side, and to the side, you could actually create, I think, duplexes that have a lot larger footprint. And then you'd be able to quite honestly put a main floor master on that level. And I think you could actually hit a lot of different buyers that are out there looking for that main floor master while also keeping the context of the neighborhood. So I don't know if that'd be something that you guys would also be interested in kind of looking at too. Because I would love to get an architecture team on that and do that as well.
Well, that's what this whole group is about, is, you know, talking about different ways to keep the neighborhood moving forward and improving the neighborhood for our community. So yeah, any of those type of things, if you've got like if you'd like to come and give a presentation and talk more about that stuff, let me know.
Absolutely.
You know, we're always looking for topics. Like, just to let everybody know, next week or next month. Well, let's do this. Is there any other, anybody else have anything they want to say on these topics? Again, I'll reiterate that pcd@sunnyside-denver.org. If you shoot an email to there, if there's anything you want to bring up, I'll go ahead and include it in the notes. We'll respond to it. If you want to be part of the group, that's the point of contact for this conversation. If not, I'll go ahead and move on to the final announcements here in the last couple of minutes. Unless anybody's got something else they want to add.
Hey, Rod, sorry, what did you say was the point of contact for that work group?
So it's in the chat there. I'll post it again here. It's pcd@sunnyside-denver.org. So if are you on a phone so you can't see the chat?
No, I can see.
Okay, there.
Cool.
Just
Yeah.
put it right there. That's the email we're going to use, and Trupti's monitoring that email, and then we'll use that. She just felt like the Google group was not the appropriate place because it goes out to like hundreds and hundreds of people. That once we start getting something, we'll start a different group, but that will be the email that she'll start out with, and get things kind of rocking and rolling. So yeah, thanks again, everybody that showed up. I do have a few announcements. So I'm going to go out of order here, but the next month we have a scheduling conflict. The second Thursday would be May 11th next month, and that happens to fall on that mayoral runoff that they're going to have at Regis. And so I don't know if anybody here wants to like pipe up. Would you rather just cancel next month's meeting or reschedule it to a different day? I mean, a few people I've talked to said rescheduling is difficult. So does anybody have any thoughts about rescheduling next month's land use meeting or just canceling it and we'll push it off until June? Anybody? Bueller?
Well, we've talked about how a lot of this stuff is time sensitive. That's another 2 months. But I understand that people probably wouldn't be here, so that's.
Yeah, well, and this would be separate from the working group. If we have an email going around and that working group can get started, you know, they can obviously work like we did before. Like when we did the CO7 and CO8 overlays, those were, I think at one point there was a stretch we were pretty much weekly or bi-weekly. And they were shorter meetings and they weren't part of this. This meeting, so that can be off on the side and they can have their own meetings in that group, but this would be just for this meeting, this monthly meeting. Does anybody have any opinion about just canceling it until June?
I think that's what we ought to do. Cancel it till June.
I heard everybody's going to be part of that, Mayor. The Trupti's volunteering over there, and you know, of course, everybody, you know, it's an important election, so I think more people want to follow along with that. I'll go ahead and you know, that was kind of my thoughts, and you know, obviously there's communications we'll put out on the social media things. If things pop up, we'll put announcements out there. So I'll just go ahead and plan on doing that. Now, what we had scheduled for next month was to have a conversation similar to this that took up most of the hour or hour and a half. about the ADUs in Denver. We've got 2 people that were planning on coming and speaking about it, a woman from the work group, and just going over it, so that anybody that was interested could know all the ins and outs of it. And by then, of course, several decisions will be made. It'll have gone through city council. I believe it will even have gone to vote on the June 5th thing. Did somebody say that was June 5th? It's final hearing. So if that gets pushed till June, it may be that we're just discussing what was voted into place, if anybody wants to know what finally transpired. So I'll figure that out, and we'll put that out there on the social media, and talk about what that agenda looks like for that next meeting. As a public service announcement, I just came across an email from the city. For everybody that's here, remember that street sweeping started. So move your cars again. I think my neighbor got one. And so I was like, I think it's like a $50 ticket. It's not cheap. And then the second announcement is I'm still doing this first and third Mondays over at Radiator from 4 to 6. They're in their beer, coffee, happy hour thing. So if anybody wants to come over and just chat about any of this, or any other topic for that matter, I'm just trying to get more exposure out there for the SUNI, land use committee, and for the group and the neighborhood organization. And so it's pretty easy for me to bike over and just sit there. And we've had some pretty fun conversations about. Pete was there one week too, so we've had some fun conversations. So if anybody's interested to join me over there, first and third Mondays, just for a couple hours, they have some pretty good deals, I guess, on the beers and the coffee too. And then Tripti wants me to remind everybody that our SUNY annual meeting is coming up this month, at the end of the month, on the 27th at Denver Bookbinding, which is at 1401 West 47th Avenue. Amanda's going to be there. They're going to have some city staff for NPI, the Calc micro grant program. People are going to be there, and I guess she's going to, I don't know, have some door prizes and share some other SUNY updates. So anybody that can be there for that, that's an in-person event, should be pretty fun. And so I would love to see everybody there.
What time is that one at, Rod?
What's that?
What time is that one at?
That's at, you know what? I don't know what time. Hold on, let me look at Trupti's email here. She did have a doors open thing. Let me move this over here. Here we go.
Looks like 5:45 to 8. I think I just saw.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sorry, I can't find the email for.
Yeah, April 27th, the book bind. Yeah, 5:45 to 8.
5:45 to 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. So I think doors open at 5:45. So that's all I had for tonight. We did manage to fill the hour in a few minutes, so that was kind of cool. I thought, I didn't know how many. Trupti had suggested that like 50 people would show up tonight, because this was such a hot topic. So I'm going to have to let her know that we didn't get quite that many. But thank you everybody for your insight and volunteering to be here tonight and your time. And I'll look forward to talking to you guys further that have signed up to be part of that group. So if anybody doesn't have anything else, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you,
Okay,
Rod.
talk to you all soon. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Melissa. Have a nice
you.
night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.